The night before the university entrance exam, my mother took a yellow talisman from her pocket. She burned it into black ashes, mixed it into a murky bowl of water, and held it out to me. "Hurry and drink this sacred water, Ngoc. The fortune teller said, drinking it guarantees you'll be the top scorer." Her eyes burned with blind faith, but underneath lay the cold calculation that I knew all too well from my previous life. I looked at the water, black ash, mingled with the smell of burnt paper and filth. In my mind, the scene of horrible food poisoning, my agonizing absence from the exam, being married off for a 100,000 van bride price. It all came back vividly. In the past life, I silently took the bowl and drank the first sip of bitterness in my life. Afterwards, I lost my future, was pushed into a living hell, and died at the hands of an alcoholic abuser. In this life, I returned. It was still the old shabby kitchen, the dim oil lamp, and that cursed poisonous bowl of water. A sudden bone-chilling smile spread across my face. I didn't knock it over. I slowly reached out my hand, not to take the cup, but to push it across the table. Smash! The ceramic bowl shattered. Black ash water splattered everywhere, clinging to the floor and my mother's dress. My mother froze, her astonishment replacing the trust in her eyes. What are you doing, Ngoc? Are you crazy? That was the master's charm. I stood up straight, facing her. I was no longer the subservient girl of yesteryear. My voice was calm, indifferent, but carried the weight of someone who had already experienced death. A charm. I sneered, bending down to pick up a broken piece of the cup, twirling it on my fingertip. "Mother," I saw it. "That talisman was the money you paid the fortune teller to exchange for a prophecy. Heaven's secrets must not be revealed. But your daughter is not suited for academia. She is only suited for work to support her younger brother." My mother's eyes widened in sheer horror, as if I had just read her most wicked thought. She recoiled half a step. What nonsense are you spewing? You're making it up. This water was meant to help you pass the exam at the top." I looked directly into her eyes, slow, but with overwhelming authority. "No, this water was the first dose of poison you prepared for me. After drinking it, I would get food poisoning, miss the exam, and dutifully accept the fate of working to support Dieu, wouldn't I? And when Dieu needed money for his wedding, you would marry me off to anyone who paid 100,000 van. Wouldn't you, Mother?" I dropped the piece of broken ceramic. It landed with a dry clack on the floor. "Mother, if I died in the previous life, at the hands of the man you sold me to, then in this life, I swear I will make every person who wants to steal my future pay 100-fold. Remember, Mother, that bowl of ash water. You owe me a life." I turned my back and left, leaving my terrified and trembling mother standing in the filthy puddle of black ash. Tomorrow I will go to the university entrance exam, not because of a charm, but because of my own hands and my own mind. This time, no one can steal Ngoc's future. Witnessing myself being cremated into a handful of ashes was actually quite a bizarre experience. I was only 28, but 8 years of marriage had left me looking 48. My husband, Chow Tay, loved to drink. When drunk, he wouldn't hesitate to beat me, regardless of time or place. Just because I was late from work and hadn't cooked dinner, he swung his fist at me as if to kill his wife. And so, I truly died. As soon as they received the news of my passing, my family rushed to the crematorium that night. They weren't there to handle my remains, but to negotiate the compensation money with the murderer, Chow Tay. My mother wailed loudly, but her eyes held no trace of sorrow. She declared, 500,000 van. Give me 500,000 van in a lump sum, and I will immediately sign the waiver. Chow Tay scoffed. I paid 100,000 van to marry her, ended up with a barren woman, and now you demand 500,000 van. Aren't you ashamed? In his eyes, I was worthless and expensive. He thought I wasn't worth the price, but my mother was adamant, threatening him with jail time if he didn't pay. Finally, my mother-in-law stepped in and paid the money. The two families completed the bank transfer and signed the waiver right there before leaving one by one. After they left, a cleaning staff member noticed the urn of ashes left, forgotten in a corner, and shook his head with a sigh. Uncared for in life and in death. No one even bothered to collect the ashes. Perhaps because my story was too tragic. God granted me a second chance. When I opened my eyes again, my mother had just returned. She hastily kicked off her shoes and took a triangular talisman from her bag. My younger brother, Dioto, was playing on the sofa, glancing up curiously before grumbling, "Where have you been, Mom?" "I'm starving, I'm about to die." My mother, beaming, lit the talisman, burned it to ash, mixed it into a large bowl of water, and handed it to me. "Ngoc, hurry and drink this sacred water," the master said, drinking it guarantees you'll be the top scorer. "Mom, why don't you let me drink something so good?" Dioto rushed over to grab the bowl, but my mother swatted him away. "Stay back. This charm water is specially for your sister. Don't mess with it." I looked at her expectant face, a cold smile involuntarily appearing at the corner of my lips. Yes, this charm was indeed for me. I was to drink the charm water so that Dioto could top the exam. I don't know which charlatan fooled her, but with Dioto's intelligence, he wouldn't achieve that even with 800 years of study. Hello and welcome to Red Cherry Audio. Thinking of the tragedy of the previous life, after drinking the water, I swung my arm and knocked the bowl over, pretending to go insane on the spot. Heavenly spirits and earthly spirits, the star of literature appears. This old woman wants to harm this goddess. Why don't you die quickly? Under the astonished gaze of my mother and Dioto, I jumped onto the table. While they looked up, I quickly delivered a painful slap to each of them. Before they could react, I dashed back to my room and locked the door. A few minutes later, the door was being violently kicked. My mother cursed, and Dioto screamed. Meanwhile, I put on my headphones and began to enjoy a relaxing English listening lesson. The next day, as I had not suffered food poisoning, I was perfectly clear-headed for the exam. Dioto and I were twins, born the same year. My parents pinned all their hopes on him, wishing for him to bring glory to the family. But little did they expect Dioto to have a pea-sized brain. My academic ranking was always in the top 10 of the whole grade, while he consistently lagged at the bottom. That was why my mother wanted to find a shortcut. She just didn't understand. For Dieu, to have a future, his brain needed replacing, or he needed to be sent back to the cycle of rebirth. The university entrance exam lasted 2 days. After the last subject, I slung my backpack on and took a bus back to Zhenfuyuan. My father drove long-distance trucks year-round, often coming home only every few months. While waiting for the results, I had to stay temporarily at my grandmother's house. My grandmother was taking a nap. She was startled to see me return. She touched my cheek, noting how terribly thin I was, and sighed helplessly. "I don't know if your mother's head is covered in lard or what, born from the same womb and yet so biased. Grandma said she had never taught my mother the idea of favoring males over females, but perhaps my mother had self-taught herself into a pig. Before the age of 10, I was left at my grandmother's house. Later, because of schooling, I was brought into the city. Although Jiu and I were twins, my mother only loved her son. My father had no voice. He always had to obey whatever my mother said. Years ago, when my mother demanded 500,000 van from Chow for my life, my father dared not utter a word. To be honest, my family wasn't exactly poor. My father handed over all his earnings to my mother. If she hadn't gambled the money away, it would have been enough to support both of us through school. In my previous life, I missed the university entrance exam, leaving me without a voice. I could only watch them pool money to buy Jiu a place in a university. When Jiu went to college, I had to wash dishes for minimum wage at a restaurant. Later, Jiu graduated, met a girlfriend, and wanted to get married. They once again sold me off for a 100,000 van bride price. Given a second chance, I was determined not to repeat the tragic path of my previous life. So, when my mother again claimed not to have money, I silently hung up the phone, took my university acceptance letter, and knelt before my grandmother. "Grandma, I want to go to school. My mother won't give me the money, but I don't want to miss this opportunity. Can you help me, please?" The last few words caught in my throat. Since my grandfather passed away, my grandmother's life hadn't been easy either. So, I convinced her with all my promises. I will study and work simultaneously. As long as I have time, I'll take on part-time jobs. I will definitely study hard, and when I have a good job, I will repay you. I will take care of you for the rest of your life. The more I spoke, the more distraught I felt. Tears streamed down my face, leaving wet trails on the floor. My grandmother pulled out her savings book, looking at me with helplessness. "Anyone would think this child has faucets for eyes. Don't worry, if your mother won't pay, your grandmother will." She half-jokingly added, "When you succeed later, your grandmother will be waiting to enjoy the good fortune." The news of my grandmother giving me money for school somehow reached my mother's ears. My mother brought Jiu back to the village, fiercely demanding I hand over the savings book. I, of course, refused. So, she grabbed my ear and cursed. "You little brat, you don't respect your mother anymore, huh? It's only because you didn't drink the master's charm that your brother failed the university entrance exam. If you don't give me the money today, I'll beat you to death." Since childhood, whenever there was trouble at home, the blame always fell on me. While still in the womb, my mother claimed I owed Jiu. When Jiu was born, he weighed 5 caddies, and I only 3.8 caddies. My mother claimed I stole all his nutrition. The doctor said Jiu kicked me out first, which is why I was born a minute earlier. But she claimed I was competitive and was suppressing my brother. Jiu made a mistake. I was beaten. Jiu had poor grades. I was beaten. Now that he failed the exam, they demanded the money my grandmother gave me for tuition. I couldn't suppress my anger and retorted, "If you hate me so much, why did you even give birth to me?" My mother's face changed color. "A daughter is a waste of money. If it weren't for you and Jiu being twins, you wouldn't even have had a chance to be born." It turned out that after becoming pregnant, she paid to see a fortune teller, confirmed the baby was a boy, and then decided to keep it. When the pregnancy was stable, she went to the hospital, and the doctor said there were 2 babies. The whole family thought it was 2 boys. Who knew they would end up having 1 boy and 1 girl? I heard that as soon as my maternal grandmother saw me, She said I was useless and a waste of money. No one liked me. Only my maternal grandmother took pity, took me home and raised me. My mother and I argued until our faces were red, and Jurtu grew impatient. Mom, why waste time talking to her? Just find the savings book yourself. He seized the opportunity while I was distracted, lunged for my bag, and rummaged through the contents. But after searching for a while, he found nothing. I smiled coldly. Don't waste your effort. I've withdrawn all the money. Don't expect to find it this lifetime. The savings book held 30,000 Van, the money my grandmother saved for her old age, and my only hope for education. I was determined not to let my mother gamble it away, or let Jurtu squander it. In the previous life, he claimed to be going to university, but in reality, he just paid for a spot at a low-tier school to party. While others were studying hard, Jurtu indulged in vices, constantly smoking, drinking, and flirting with girls. The consequence was that immediately after graduation, he got his girlfriend pregnant. Her family was also poor and relied on marrying off their daughter to raise money for their son to buy a house. They came to make a scene with my parents, demanding 100,000 Van for the bride price. My family had poured all their money into Jurtu's education, and even his living expenses were my responsibilities. The money I earned painstakingly washing dishes was not enough to save anything. Yet, in the end, they still sold me for 100,000 Van to that scumbag Chow-Tay. I wanted to resist, but my ID and household registration were hidden by my mother. On the wedding day, she and my father waited outside the marriage registry office. As soon as we received the marriage certificate, they snatched my documents away. They even loudly claimed they were safekeeping them for me. All the tragedies I suffered in the previous life were created by them. Jurtu, that useless person, enjoyed all the benefits in the previous life, stepping on my blood and tears to live comfortably. Now he wanted to repeat it. The old and new grudges surged up. I let out a loud yell, flung my mother's hand away, and lunged straight at Jurtu. Early that morning, my grandmother went to the market to buy groceries. When she came back with her shopping basket, she saw the three of us fighting fiercely. A teenage girl's strength can be greater than a boy's. My face bore a handprint, but I struggled to pin the person underneath, cursing and kicking. Jurtu was pinned to the ground and took several punches. His right eye was swollen. He tried to get up but couldn't escape, just lying there panting. While Jurtu was suffering, I wasn't having an easy time either. As I hit him, my mother, protective of her son, grabbed my hair and yanked. Not only that, I also took quite a few blows from my mother. My skin under my clothes was probably bruised. The shopping basket dropped to the ground, and my grandmother cried out in despair. Heavens! How could a mother be born who doesn't know right from wrong? People often say that parental disharmony is largely due to the parents' lack of virtue. That saying truly applies to my parents. The son is a treasure. The daughter is worth less than a blade of grass. My grandmother grabbed my mother's arm and shouted, "Let go!" My mother was unwilling, but still released her hand, then angrily brushed the loose strands of hair from her fingers to the ground. I stood up and moved aside, touching the patchy bald spot where my hair had been pulled out. Tears flowed uncontrollably, not stopping. That is your biological daughter. Yet you hit her as if you wanted to kill her. My mother glared with hatred. I only regret never having given birth to this waste of money. She always talked about waste of money, yet she didn't consider that she was a woman herself. Knowing her daughter was stubborn, my grandmother didn't bother to reason with her. She turned and walked into the kitchen. A moment later, she returned with a rolling pin. My grandmother looked at my mother and articulated clearly, "If you don't want this daughter, I will take care of her. Don't ever set foot here again from now on. My mother and you." Two were chased out of the house by my grandmother, but I saw they were still not reconciled, especially my mother. Before leaving, she fiercely glared at me. "You think you've escaped, huh? Not a chance." Because of that statement, I had nightmares for several nights. It wasn't until the start of the school year, when I was busy preparing for university, that I gradually escaped the fear. Due to my family's influence, I was very cautious in social interactions. My roommates were all from big cities. Fearing their disdain, I always kept the habit of leaving early and coming back late, limiting contact outside of study hours. Just the tuition and various miscellaneous fees for 1 month cost 8,000, 9,000 yuan. The 30,000 van that my grandmother had painstakingly saved now only had 2/3 remaining. Looking at the account balance, I felt uneasy. With the upcoming holidays, my roommates were discussing travel plans. Lu, Vian. Vian suddenly thought of me and turned to ask, "Ngoc, are you coming with us?" I heard the food and entertainment in Huainan are amazing. I held my phone, looking at job postings for part-time work, and gently shook my head. "I plan to work part-time, so I can't join. You all have fun." They all had families to take care of everything, but I was different. However, after living together for a while, I realized they were not as difficult to approach as I had imagined. The part-time job was introduced by an older student. Her family situation was similar to mine. She also managed her own living expenses. She helped me find a job, and I bought her a bubble tea to thank her. Yet, as soon as I saw the place where I was supposed to work, I wanted to withdraw. Even though I didn't frequent entertainment venues in my past life, I recognized it as a bar. I hesitated, then turned to Sister Chu Tin awkwardly. "Sister, I'm afraid I'm not suitable. I probably can't do this job." "Ngoc, you're wrong to say that. Every job is valuable. Besides, this is a respectable bar. 1 hour of work here equals a whole month of work outside." I still wanted to leave, handing her the bubble tea and turning to walk away. Just then, the manager approached. He assessed me from head to toe, looking satisfied as he said to Chu Tin, "This girl looks good. Tonight, the two of you sell drinks in the VIP room." Sister Chu's eyes lit up, and she tightly held my hand, pulling me into the staff entrance. Along the way, she whispered in my ear, "Do you know how much the revenue is for the VIP room in one night? Just one large order from a customer, and you'll cover your whole year's tuition." The thought of one night covering a year's tuition was indeed tempting. I still felt guilty using the money my grandmother had saved for her old age to go to school. Seeing my hesitation, Sister Chu smiled. "We are only selling drinks, not ourselves. Don't worry, the customers here are all wealthy. They have high standards." I looked at my somewhat rustic appearance and involuntarily felt relieved. The manager arranged for us to change into 2 black dresses and told us to wait outside the room. The first customer entered, and Sister Chu enthusiastically rushed to greet them. A moment later, she returned, pouting. "I thought it was a rich crowd, but it's just some students hanging out. They didn't order any wine, but asked for a free fruit plate. How stingy." She clearly showed her annoyance, not bothering to serve that group of students, and asked me to bring the food in. The barroom was dark. I put down the tray and was about to leave when I heard a snort. "Oh, isn't this my noble sister? What's up? Now you have to work as a waitress in a bar." As he spoke, the whole group burst into laughter. The young men and women looked at me as if I were a sideshow. Then, the girl clinging to Jyotu's arm spoke up. "Jyotu, if this is your sister working here, can we order wine and have your sister pay for it?" The girl's voice was deliberately saccharine. I recognized her. It was Ton An, Jyotu's girlfriend from the previous life. She was the one who got pregnant and demanded a bride price, which led to me being married off to the domestic abuser. Just as expected, no good people ever stayed by Jyotu's side. They chimed in, and Jyotu waved his hand. "Order everything. Put it on my sister's bill. Don't worry, she wouldn't dare not pay." Looking at his arrogant expression, I suppressed my anger and gritted my teeth. "I don't have any money. If you dare order and not pay, don't blame me when the security guards beat you up." The bar had cameras everywhere, which was why I didn't dare retaliate physically. Jyotu ignored me, picking up the tablet and ordering several expensive bottles of foreign wine. Sister Chu's eyes narrowed with greed, and she wanted to go back into the room to serve them. I kindly warned her that those students definitely didn't have money and might default on the bill. She looked annoyed, thinking I wanted to steal her customers, and brushed me aside. I took the opportunity to back out, just by looking at Jyotu's friends. It was clear they couldn't afford the 120,000 van wine bill. Immediately, I found a place to change back into my old clothes. After changing, I put on my backpack, feigned a stomach ache, and approached the manager. "Sir, I have a terrible stomach ache. I must have eaten something bad. I can't work. I have to go to the hospital for medicine." To make it more believable, I had splashed water on my face, making me look pale and sweaty. The manager took a step back from me. All right, you can go home." I hesitated. "So, I worked for an hour. Do I get paid?" He glared at me. "You haven't sold a single bottle. Where would the salary come from? Hurry up and leave. Customers are coming. Don't block the way." After escaping the bar, I texted Sister Chu, telling her I had a stomach ache. She only replied curtly, "Got it." I knew she didn't care, so I let it be. If she was insistent on serving them, so be it. Even if Jyotu defaulted, it probably wouldn't affect her much. I took the bus back to school that very night. The bar was too stressful. As soon as I got back to the dormitory, I collapsed into sleep. When I opened my eyes, it was already the next morning. Looking at my phone, I was stunned. Hundreds of missed calls and countless messages flooded in. I scrolled past messages from my parents and Jyotu and opened the chat window with Sister Chu. A barrage of messages appeared, all asking where I was. I replied, "I'm at the dormitory." Immediately after, the phone rang frantically. As soon as I answered, her voice was shrill. "Ngoc, your brother ordered wine and didn't pay, causing me to be detained at the bar. Hurry and bring the money to bail us out." I was stunned. "Why don't you call his parents? Why call me? You bastard. You said you would pay, and then you ran away. Hurry and bring the money to save me, or I'll tell your parents to beat you to death." Jyotu was as arrogant as ever. However, this time, there was a hint of fear in his voice. Definitely. He must have been taught a lesson by the bar staff. Not daring to call his parents, he sought me out, hoping to clean up this mess. But I wasn't stupid. I had just escaped. Why would I go back? Seeing that I wouldn't come back, there was silence on the other end for a few seconds. Then came two miserable screams. I didn't feel any sympathy for Jiu. As for Sister Chu, I only found out after returning to school that she had lured several younger students to work with her. Initially, she promised a decent job, but soon the manager forced them to serve drinks. She was greedy for money and wanted a commission from the wine that Jiu ordered. Her greed made her ignore my warning. Being in this situation was her own doing. Unable to intimidate me, Jiu had no choice but to call his parents. That 120,000 van wine bill was like a ticking time bomb in their hands. Fearing my parents would come looking for me, I changed my phone SIM card that night. Despite it being a holiday, the school was still quite crowded with students who hadn't gone home. During the day, I mostly stayed in the library reading, and I took on small cleaning jobs on the side. Although the pay wasn't much, it was enough to cover my daily meals. After the holiday, school resumed as normal. The bell for the end of class had just rung when someone approached my desk. Looking up, I held my breath. It was Chu Tin, the one who introduced the bar job. But this time, she looked completely different from before. She had big curly hair, large hoop earrings, and was chewing gum. Sister Chu placed her bright red fingernails on the desk and smirked. "Do you want to talk here or outside?" Seeing the curious glances all around, I took a deep breath and answered concisely, "Outside." If she spoke here, my reputation would be instantly ruined. Even though I hadn't done anything wrong, once rumors spread, no one would bother to find out the truth. People around only watched for the drama. They didn't care about the facts. Seeing that I was cooperative, Sister Chu didn't make a scene. After all, she also worked part-time at the bar. If she caused a commotion, she wouldn't benefit either. I followed her out of the classroom and headed straight for the gate. She wanted to walk further, but I stopped dead in my tracks. "Say what you need to say right here. I have another class." Sister Chu turned around, grabbed my arm, and pulled me away. "Let's talk over there." I looked in the direction she pointed and felt a growing sense of unease. In my previous life, I lived with Chow Tay for 8 years. To me, that time was nothing short of hell, bringing only pain. Given a chance to live again, I thought I would never have to see him again. Unexpectedly, he appeared. As soon as he saw me, Chow Tay strode towards me, pretended to casually toss his hair, and held out his hand. "Hello, Ngoc. I'm Chow Tay, the man Aunt Trio introduced you to." Aunt Trio, in his words, was most likely my mother. "Aunt Trio said you studied at a prestigious university. It seems we are truly a match made in heaven." He rambled on alone, looking quite foolish. I didn't want to reply, so I pushed Chow Tin aside, intending to go back. After only 2 steps, both Chow Tin and Chow Tay rushed to grab my arms tightly. Chow Tin lowered her voice and snapped at Chow Tay. "Cousin, you've met the person now. Don't renege on the 100,000 van deal." I was startled. It turned out these two were cousins. In my previous life, when I married Chow Tay, I heard he had a cousin who was a successful businesswoman abroad. Now I realized that person was Chow Tin. What a cruel twist of fate. I had strived to take a completely different path from my previous life. Yet in the end, the hand of destiny pushed me into this predicament. Chow Tin and Jiu. To cause trouble at the bar, and after a convoluted path, the consequence still fell on me. Chow Tin wanted money, and Chow Tay demanded to take me to the Civil Affairs Bureau to get the marriage certificate. He said my parents were waiting there with the household registration book. As soon as I signed, his mother would transfer the money to clear the bar debt. A shameless pair of cousins, treating me like merchandise. I looked towards the security guard not far away, intending to scream for help, but Chow Tai covered my mouth and dragged me away. Thinking about what would happen if I was dragged away, I broke out in a cold sweat of fear. The strength difference between a man and a woman was too great. I struggled with all my might but couldn't escape. Moreover, Chow Tin was helping him. Watching the school gate grow further away, I felt only despair in my heart. I had clearly escaped the fate of marrying Chow Tai. God gave me a second chance. Was I still being forced to repeat the old tragedy? At that moment, I no longer cried. I felt only numbness inside. Just as I was about to be shoved into a van, several shouts suddenly rang out from behind. "Help! Someone is being kidnapped! Call the police quickly! Guys, hurry and save her!" The loud cries drew the attention of everyone at the school gate. The security guard rushed over, separating me from them. Chow Tai and Chow Tin tried to resist, but were quickly pinned down by Lu Vien and several male students. Vien looked at me, gave me a reassuring look, then slapped Chow Tin directly, luring classmates to be sold with the trick of a part-time job. "Chow Tin, did you feed all your knowledge to dogs? If we had arrived later, who knows how many more people you would have harmed." Vien's words clearly explained the situation, sparking outrage among the bystanders. They looked at Chow Tin's overly mature appearance, and all agreed she was not a good person. The siblings tried hard to explain themselves, but no one believed them. Lu Vien and two roommates took me into the police car. Along the way, she held my hand tightly and apologized. "Ngoc, we didn't mean to eavesdrop. We saw you being called out by Chow Tin with a pale face, and we were so worried that we decided to follow you from afar. Who knew they would see me being dragged away?" So the group rushed out to stop Chow Tai. "We've all heard the rumors circulating among the girls about Chow Tin's part-time job. Don't worry. After today, the rumors won't drag you into this." Everyone witnessed me being almost sold off. I looked at Vien, incredibly grateful, but could only manage to say thank you. Since childhood, I only received love from my grandmother, which was family love. As for Vien and my roommates, they genuinely treated me as a friend. Now, I could open my heart to them. On the way to the police station, I told them my story. It should have been a difficult family matter to talk about, but under their worried gaze, I didn't feel embarrassed at all. After hearing the story, the easily emotional friend Gu Yue burst into tears. "Wow, Ngoc, how can there be parents like this in the world? After giving birth to a child, how can they be so discriminatory?" Seeing her cry so sadly, I suddenly felt my sadness lessen. At least, I still had my grandmother and good friends. That was enough. When we arrived at the station, Chow Tai and Chow Tin exchanged glances and simultaneously changed their statements. Chow Tai claimed we were just friends, having an argument, and that there was a struggle, not a kidnapping. Chow Tin also nodded in agreement. Chow Tai's phone contained several photos of me, along with a chat log with my mother. Despite the testimony of my 3 or 4 roommates, the police still said it was difficult to clearly distinguish the dispute between me and the Chow family. Half an hour later, my parents arrived with Dio Tu. My mother tried to slap me as soon as she entered but was blocked by Lu Vien. Vien had practiced taekwondo for several years. Her strength was not inferior to a man's. Unable to hit me, my mother stood a meter away and shouted, "You waste of money! Are you rebelling? Chow Tai is handsome and works for the state. Marrying you is more than enough. Don't be ungrateful." My father stood behind my mother, fawningly asking Chow Tay if the 100,000 van deal was still on. Cornered like this, Chow Tay lost face and angrily insisted, "It's off. I pay money to find a wife, not a debt. If I have money, I'm not afraid of not finding a girl." Chow Tay's job looked respectable on the surface, and with someone vouching for him, he quickly signed the papers and left. Chow Tin huddled and cried in a corner of the room. I ignored her. I only turned to my mother and asked, "Where is the household registration book?" I no longer had any feelings for them. I didn't want to be tied to them anymore. I absolutely had to get my household registration back. The school also had a policy for students to transfer their huku, household registration. When she heard my question, my mother glared. "No way! I raised you to this age, and you want to abandon me? Not a chance." Sure enough, the next sentence was as I predicted. "If you want the household registration book, give me 500,000 van." Truly, my mother's cheek was thicker than a city wall. After a moment of silence, Lu Vien tugged at my sleeve and asked, "Ngoc Di, is this your stepmother?" "She is my biological mother," I sighed. Even Snow White's stepmother was kinder. Where would a student like me get 500,000 van? Even if I worked after graduation, it would take 5 to 10 years of not eating or drinking to save that much. The police officers also shook their heads. It was a difficult family matter. I didn't pressure them and left the station with my friends. My father was a truck driver. My mother couldn't stay at the station indefinitely, and I heard Dieu too was stuck working at the bar to pay off the debt. I waited for a good day to return to the place of household registration. The police were right. I could reapply for my ID card and household registration book. I submitted the declaration, and a month later, my new ID card and household registration book were sent directly to the school. I immediately transferred my huku out of the Chen family and changed my name. Ngoc Di. I didn't want to keep that name. There was no need to share any connection with that scumbag Dieu Tu. I wrote Chen Ngoc Di in the old name section and filled in the new name as Chen Xingyi, wishing for peace, luck, and smooth sailing in everything. Due to my excellent academic performance, I received a university scholarship in the second semester, coupled with the money from tutoring on weekends. By my third year, I had fully repaid the money my grandmother saved for her old age. I never wanted to call it money for her funeral arrangements. To me, my grandmother was still healthy and would enjoy a long, happy life. When I was in my final year, interning, I was fortunate to be accepted into a listed company. During the Mid-Autumn Festival, I returned to my hometown, wanting to bring my grandmother to the city to live. When I arrived, I saw quite a crowd inside the house. In addition to my parents, there were Dieu Tu, his girlfriend, and her parents and older brother. Seeing me, my father immediately pointed. "See, the richest person in our family now is her. How much bride price do you need? Tell her." His matter-of-fact attitude made me laugh contemptuously. My lips curved up, but there was no smile in my eyes. "Get out of here, all of you, or I'll call the police." The house was small, and they were crowding the space, forcing my grandmother to sit outside on the doorstep. Seeing that sight made my blood boil. So naturally, I wasn't going to be polite. Furthermore, I had made it clear that I would not provide for my parents. No money, no life, and no person. Before Dieu Tu could even speak, Tone Ann rushed forward. "Sister, I'm pregnant with the Chen family's grandson. Shouldn't you care about your own nephew?" I was surprised. "Before giving birth, how do you know it's a boy?" Ton Un proudly puffed out her belly. My mother-in-law consulted a fortune teller. It's definitely a boy. Seeing the joy on my parents' faces, I finally understood. No wonder they happily spent the bride price in the previous life. It was because they were certain they would have a grandson. Dioto's son was naturally a treasure in their eyes. Sadly, in my previous life, I struggled my whole life only to be a stepping stone for Dieu to face with their brazen demands for money. I pulled out a can of pepper spray from my bag. Before they could react, I covered my nose and sprayed relentlessly. Immediately, screams and coughs filled the air. I quickly carried my grandmother out and drove her to the car. Last month, I had already told my grandmother to be ready. Her luggage was packed a long time ago. She didn't need pots or pans. I swiftly put her bag in the trunk, stepped on the gas, and sped out of the town. Strangely, the road I used to walk with difficulty now looked beautiful. My grandmother had never left the town. She constantly looked around curiously, asking me questions. I answered each one, patiently telling her about the wonderful things outside. In the past, thanks to her wholehearted help, I was able to escape the family's shadow and see the world in all its colors. Now that I had the ability to repay her, it was the greatest happiness in my life. As for my parents, who were overly obsessed with their son, they could live with their son. This path of rebirth, I have walked from the age of 18 to 28. This time, I will continue to walk to 38, then 48. I will gradually achieve success in my career and take care of my grandmother in her old age. As for marriage, I didn't have the courage to try again, because I had to use my whole life to heal the childhood trauma that never faded. Epilogue. Unable to get money from Chen Xingyi, the Tan family immediately announced the cancellation of the engagement. Their daughter needed to get married. She couldn't wait for the Chen family to gather enough money. So they decisively took Ton An to the hospital for an abortion. It was said that Ton An's mental state began to show signs of abnormality not long after she was forced to have an abortion. Mr. and Mrs. Chen lamented bitterly, and after dealing with Jiotou, they had to compensate the Tern family with a large sum. After selling their house, they lost their home. They finally remembered the daughter who had long been out of contact. Unfortunately, they didn't have Chen Xingyi's address or contact information, nor did they know where the old lady was. After going through all their relatives without finding her, they had to take their tattered belongings and return to their old hometown. Years ago, they enthusiastically left the town. In the end, they returned disheartened in their old age. Life was not smooth. Neighbors often heard them arguing constantly. Initially, it was just verbal quarrels. Later, it was accompanied by the sound of a drunken man going berserk, mixed with the miserable cries of a woman. As for Chao Te, thanks to his family's introduction, he managed to marry his boss's only daughter, a wealthy heiress. However, no one told him that his wife was 3 months pregnant when they married. He became a father, but was still cuckolded. To keep his job, he had to swallow his pride and live through it. However, suppression eventually reaches a breaking point. As for Chao Tin, she hadn't even graduated from university before she was working as a waitress selling drinks at the bar. She earned a lot, but spent even more. Old debts piled up with new ones. Finally, due to overwhelming pressure, she committed suicide by burning charcoal. Destiny ultimately struck each person in an unavoidable way.